Hello, I'm Ryan Huffman, the photo professor. I have over 13 years of experience teaching photography at the university level and over 20 years of professional photography experience. There's something that I've learned in all of my experience. It seems as though no two people learn photography the same way, but that's actually a little bit untrue. There are a lot of ways to learn photography. Some of the methods that I've tried over the years that I've taught photography that have really worked well, and a bunch of things that I've done that haven't worked well. And I've kind of compiled them together into this kind of an idea of a sequence and a structure that I just refer to simply as the mindful photography structure. If you're a beginner in photography and you are struggling learning how to, control your camera, learning how to take pictures, and your stuff just isn't turning out, it's not because you're bad at photography, okay? You're not alone. A lot of people start photography and they just flounder and they don't know what to do and they don't have someone there to mentor them and they just give up. If you are in that category of, you're getting started and you're having a hard time, it's probably because the order in which you're learning photography is scattered and unordered. That's really common. That could be because you are searching on social media for random tips and you just kind of get overwhelmed by all these tips, and you hear one person say you should always use aperture priority mode, and you hear another person say you should always shoot manual, and another person says it's okay to shoot auto. You're going to hear all sorts of stuff. When you're beginning, you should not focus on all the technical aspects. Don't focus on aperture, shutter speed, ISO. Don't focus on your gear. That's another misconception, is that people think, oh, my gear is just not good. It's, an old camera. It just doesn't work very well. That doesn't matter. Okay. A person that is trained to be a good photographer can take excellent quality shots with any camera that they've got. So what I want to do instead is I want to lay the foundation to give you a structured and sequenced way to learn photography. All right, so let's get started. Let's say you're trying to figure out aperture because you saw that that was really important and you're playing around with aperture, but the numbers don't mean anything to you and you don't even know how to change aperture on your camera because you don't really know how to use your camera. So think about it like this. If you were in construction and you were trying to build a house, how would you build it if you didn't have a blueprint? The same thing is true in photography, that we have to have some sort of a blueprint. We have to have a plan, a structure to be able to understand how to get to those certain areas. Again, if you want to go back to a house, let's say you have the blueprint, but you have no idea what tools to use, right? You've never built a house before. You got the blueprint sitting in front of you, you have the plan, but you have no idea how to use any of the tools or actually implement the plan. I'm going to give you the blueprint, and then I'm going to teach you how to understand, how to read the blueprint, okay? And how to really understand it. And then we will get to the tools, but you're going to take your time to get there. Here's the reason why tips get confusing. There's a bunch of reasons, actually. Because number one, they're random. Right? You see one tip one day and then you see two or three more the next day, and maybe they kind of contradict each other. But also, tips rely on context. So someone that's not experienced at teaching people might think that, it's really important to start with this certain setting or that certain setting. But let's say that someone's trying to teach you how to, like I said earlier, use aperture. And they're making a YouTube video and they say, okay, adjust your aperture to f8.0. What does that mean to you? If you don't know what aperture is, let alone how to change it on your camera, then you're lost, right? The same thing could be true of pretty much any technical setting on a camera. So those types of tips sometimes, kind of get you lost. And they might say, okay, well, f11 aperture has deep depth of field and f1.4 aperture has shallow depth of field. Again, what does that mean to you? Really nothing if you don't understand aperture. Also, does your lens sorry, even open up to f1.4. And if it doesn't, and you're looking at that and you're like, well, is my camera broken? Is my lens broken? See, you have to have context. You have to have a much stronger structure underneath you to be able to understand what all of those tips even mean. Another problem with random tips is that beginners don't know when to use those tips. And if someone tells you, okay, f11 is deep depth of field, f1.4 is shallow depth of field, what's depth of field? What does that mean? When do I need a shallow depth of field? When do I need a deep depth of field? When do I need, more light in the background versus in the foreground? All of these things, that those tips that you're hearing aren't really answering for you. They're assuming, right? They're assuming that you already understand aperture. But if you don't, then the tips are worthless. They're meaningless until you get to that level of understanding. Another issue with random tips is, I don't know about you, but for me, whenever I'm hit with a bunch of things that I don't exactly understand, I get anxious. So random tips cause anxiety. A lot of us have been there, whether it's photography or just anything in life that you're trying to learn. If those tips are all random and you don't know how to sequence them and structure them and use them effectively, it's going to be overwhelming. You're going to get anxious, and a lot of people just kind of give up. I don't want that to happen. Beginners do not need more tips, okay? What beginners need is a sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do this, do this, do this. That makes it a lot easier. There is a good sequence that can work pretty effectively. It doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone, but I've seen, students come in with a lot of photo knowledge and zero photo knowledge. And this system, that I talk about, even helps those that come in with a lot of knowledge because, again, they learned in an unordered fashion, and going back to the beginning and learning things new in a different way helps them see images in a totally different way. If you are on the verge of quitting photography, or maybe even, you're an experienced photographer or a partially experienced photographer, and you are, getting burned out, you don't feel creative anymore, I'm here to help. Okay. We can get through this together, and it's going to be a fun, enjoyable experience. So, what do I mean when I talk about the mindful approach to photography? Mindfulness in general just kind of means slowing down a little bit and, really noticing things. Now, I personally have ADHD, so it's kind of hard for me to slow down sometimes. But I have learned that that's one way that I can control my ADHD a little bit, is to kind of make myself be more mindful. So this approach kind of came out of necessity for myself also in my daily life. And so when we think about being mindful, we think about like slowing things down and just really thinking about them and appreciating what's going on, being very aware of what's going on. We need to notice things that we probably aren't noticing on a daily basis in our life. I guarantee you have driven by, the same places hundreds and hundreds of times in your life, and you've never noticed some key details about them. Mindfulness just kind of means being aware of those things and noticing those things. And with photography, putting them together in a way that pleases the eye. What is the mindful approach to photography in terms of the actual steps? Well, the first thing we're going to start with is orientation. And this is the orientation. Just kind of getting an overview and understanding what the mindful approach is, why it even matters, why it may or may not work for you. The next part is seeing light. Seeing light is the single most important part of photography. Why is that? Well, because without light, we really can't see anything, can we? We can't capture images. The literal definition of photography, the Latin root, it means painting with light. So, if you're in a completely dark room, you can't take a picture of anything because there's nothing to take a picture of. If you turn a flashlight on and aim it at a person, all of a sudden you can see the person so you can take a picture of them, right? So that's where we have to start, is being able to see light. I will have videos that go into much more detail about this, but for now, just understand seeing light is number one, the most important thing. Next, we'll talk about composition. Composition, we know that there's a bunch of rules of composition. Most people have heard of things like the rule of thirds and leading lines and framing, but there's more to it than that. And the reason why you want to learn composition before you learn about any technical settings is because you can learn about composition with any camera. You don't need to know how to work the camera. You can put it in fully automatic mode and you can just go out and trust your vision. So composition and lighting rely heavily just right here, seeing, right? Seeing the scene, understanding where are the elements in the scene, how are they coming together, what do they look like. Next, we'll talk about exposure, and we're going to, start slow and just understanding exposure in general. How much light is actually hitting the digital camera sensor, or if you're shooting film, kudos to you. If you're shooting film, how much light is hitting the film? That's all exposure really refers to. And then we can, gradually get into some of those technical settings of understanding how to control the exposure. How do we control how much light is hitting that sensor or that film? And you're going to find that there are multiple ways that we can do that, and it's kind of a balancing act. So it does get a little bit more technical when we get there, but we will go slow to be able to hit those key points to get a really good understanding of exposure. From there, it's going to be practice. Through my videos, I will give you some exercises if you want to go try and do some stuff. Everything I do is kind of coming from a professor standpoint, and it's, take it or leave it. If you want to go out and shoot some of those exercises, then, it's probably going to be beneficial to you. But by no means do you need to. You can make up your own exercises or assignments or whatever you want to do. But practice, is going to be really important to hone your skills, but you want to just have fun with it, right? Like, never put yourself in a box where you have to, okay, on this day I have to shoot this exact thing. That's going to kill your momentum. You want to be loose and free with it and have some fun with it. I've been writing and building resources for quite a while now, and those resources can, I think, really help people understand this journey. So in conjunction with the videos, there's other things that I have that can probably help as well. So if you like what you hear, if you're interested in this type of an approach, please subscribe. And I'll be putting these videos out once or twice a week, probably, with updates. Thanks for being here. I look forward to bringing you more topics in the future and hearing your feedback.